Hi, and welcome to today's sleep story. I'm Lara, and I'll be guiding you on a peaceful journey towards deep relaxation and high quality sleep. Start by finding a position that feels just right, whether you're lying down or sitting comfortably. Whenever you're ready, gently close your eyes. Now, take a slow, deep breath in, letting your chest rise with the air. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any tension or stress from the day. With each breath, let yourself drift deeper into this peaceful moment, leaving behind the noise and busyness, and fully embracing the calmness of now. So let's begin. Lila had always been a curious soul, one who wondered about the bigger questions in life. Why was she here? What was her purpose? In her 20s, these questions had started to feel heavier. She was standing at the crossroads of adulthood, but nothing seemed to align. It was like she was walking through life with a fog in front of her, unsure which way to go, yet always moving forward. There was a hunger inside her, a desire to know more, to understand something deeper about herself, but she wasn't sure where to turn. It was one rainy evening when she first heard the stories of the Garden of Reflection. Her grandmother, a woman of few words but deep wisdom, had spoken of it often when Lila was a child. Back then, the stories seemed just like fairy tales, beautiful but distant, woven into the fabric of bedtime nostalgia. But now, as an adult, Lila's heart was drawn to them, as if the stories held answers she hadn't even known she was searching for. Lila had always been busy, rushing from one task to the next, often too focused on the future to pause and take a deep breath. But lately, things felt different. There was an urgency, a call to find something, a quiet place that might hold the wisdom she needed to move forward. It was time to stop rushing, she realized. It was time to find the garden. The map that would lead her to the garden was simple, though the path itself was said to be elusive. Her grandmother had described it many times. A gate hidden deep within the woods, covered in ivy and mystery. A gate that could only be found when the seeker was truly ready. Lila had no idea how long it would take to find it, but she packed a small bag and set off early that morning, the mist still lingering in the air. The forest was dense and quiet, with tall trees that seemed to stretch forever, their trunks winding like ancient serpents. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the smell of earth and rain. Lila's heart pounded as she walked deeper into the woods, the path winding around thickets and streams. It felt like she was entering a world untouched by time, where everything moved at its own pace. There was a stillness here that made her feel both small and incredibly connected to something greater. She walked for hours, following what seemed like an endless trail. The forest felt alive. Every rustle in the leaves, every chirp from the birds, and every gust of wind carried a sense of purpose. And yet, she felt no closer to finding the gate. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe she wasn't meant to find it after all. But something in her heart told her to keep going, to trust the journey, even if it felt uncertain. Just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Lila saw it. A weathered wooden gate, half covered in ivy, standing quietly, as if waiting for her. Her heart skipped a beat. She had found it. She wasn't sure how or why, but here it was, right in front of her. She pushed the gate open slowly, the hinges creaking as it moved. Beyond it lay a garden like nothing she had ever seen. The garden was vast, stretching out in all directions. Flowers of every colour bloomed in patches, their petals opening and closing in a rhythm that felt like breathing. The trees in the distance were tall and ancient, their roots spread wide across the ground, like fingers reaching deep into the earth. The air smelled sweeter here, with hints of lavender and jasmine mixing together in fragrance that calmed the mind. Everything seemed so peaceful, so still, yet so full of life. Lila stepped into the garden and immediately felt a wave of peace wash over her. The noise and chaos of the outside world seemed to disappear. She was alone, yet she felt more connected to everything than she ever had before. She wandered through the garden, letting her feet carry her wherever they wished. After some time, she came across a clearing, and in the center of it stood a massive tree. Its trunk was wide and gnarled, its branches reaching high into the sky, twisted and ancient. It seemed to radiate a quiet power, a sense of timelessness. This tree felt different, as if it held the wisdom of countless generations, as though it had seen all the seasons of life and had learnt from them. Lila felt compelled to sit beneath its shade. She didn't know why, but she knew this was where she needed to be. She sat down on the soft grass, her back against the rough bark of the tree, and closed her eyes. The breeze stirred the leaves above her, creating a soft, rhythmic rustling. She took a deep breath and let the air fill her lungs, allowing the quiet of the garden to settle in her soul. The longer she sat there, the more she began to notice the small details. The way the light played on the leaves, the quiet hum of the earth beneath her, the soft flicker of energy that seemed to pulse through the air. It was as if the garden itself was alive, breathing in time with her own breath. And in that stillness, something began to stir within her. Her mind, which had been clouded with doubts and questions for so long, started to clear. She had spent so much time looking outside of herself for answers. She had looked to others for validation, to the world around her for guidance. But now, sitting in the garden, something clicked. She didn't need to search for answers outside of herself. The wisdom was already within her. As Lila sat there, she realized that she had been trying to rush through life, trying to figure everything out in a hurry. She had been so focused on the future that she had forgotten to be present in the moment. The garden, with its quiet peace, had shown her that life wasn't about rushing. It wasn't about finding all the answers right away. Life was about being here, right now, and trusting that everything would unfold in its own time. The longer she sat, the more she began to understand the lesson the garden had for her. It wasn't about fixing things or having everything figured out. It was about accepting that life is a journey not a destination. It was about trusting the process. And that journey could only be experienced fully when she was truly present, when she was open to the lessons that came with each moment. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the garden, Lila felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She had begun searching for something outside of herself, but now she realized that the only thing she truly needed was to trust in herself, to trust in the path she was on, even if it didn't seem clear, to trust that the answers would come when they were meant to. The garden was not just a place, it was a reflection of the journey within. And in that moment, Lila understood that her journey was her own, unique and unfolding with each step she took. There was no need to rush, no need to force things to happen. She just needed to live, to experience, and to trust that everything was already happening as it should. As the evening turned to night, Lila stood up, feeling a new sense of lightness in her heart. The garden had given her the clarity she needed. She didn't need to have it all figured out. She just needed to trust that life would guide her, one step at a time. With a final look at the ancient tree, Lila turned to leave, knowing that she would carry the wisdom of the garden with her. The journey wasn't about rushing to an end. It was about living fully in each moment, trusting the process, and being present in the now. As she stepped back through the gate and into the world, Lila felt a quiet confidence grow inside her. She didn't need to know all the answers. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and that was enough. I hope Lila's story resonates with you in some capacity, and you too also learn to feel exactly where you are meant to be. Sleep well, dear listener, and good night.